Imagine this. A woman stands at the edge of a crowded room. Everyone around her is talking, laughing, and moving, yet she feels every vibration, every mood. A stranger's sadness hits her like a wave. Someone's anxiety tightens her chest. She smiles softly, pretending to be fine. But inside, she's drowning in emotions that don't even belong to her. That woman is the empath, and beneath her warmth, beneath her endless compassion, lies a quiet torment, the inability to set boundaries without guilt. Carl Jung would say this is not just psychological. It's archetypal. It's the sacred wound of the wounded healer, the one who absorbs pain because she believes love must always cost her something. But here's the part. No one tells her. Empathy without boundaries isn't love. It's self-erasure. Every empath woman has lived this story in one form or another. She's the friend who answers calls at midnight, the partner who forgives too easily, the colleague who says yes even when she's exhausted. People call her selfless, but she's not. She's depleted. Silently, invisibly, beautifully broken by her own generosity. And it all starts early. From childhood, the empath woman learns that love is earned through emotional labor. Maybe she grew up in a home where someone was always upset, and she became the peacekeeper. Maybe she absorbed her parents' pain before she could even name her own. She learned to scan rooms for emotional danger, to anticipate needs, to shrink her own voice so others could breathe. By the time she reaches adulthood, empathy becomes her identity. She feels responsible for the moods of everyone around her. Saying no feels like betrayal. Setting boundaries feels like abandonment. And yet, she can't shake the exhaustion that follows every act of kindness. Jung would describe this as an inflation of the anima, the feminine energy expanding beyond balance, swallowing the self in compassion. The empath becomes the caregiver archetype in its extreme form, the healer who cannot stop healing. But here's where everything breaks. Because when you give endlessly without boundary, you don't just lose energy, you lose self-definition. The empath woman becomes an emotional chameleon, mirroring others so completely that she forgets who she is. She says, "I'm fine," but what she really means is, "I don't know what's mine anymore." This is the psychological cost of over-empathy, the dissolution of identity, and it's precisely this loss that makes boundaries feel so impossible. Boundaries, to the empath, feel like walls, like cruelty, like something a cold person would do. But in truth, boundaries are not barriers, they're bridges. They teach the world how to meet her in her authenticity, not in her sacrifice. But here's the problem. When an empath woman finally tries to set a boundary, the world often resists. People who once benefited from her giving suddenly call her difficult or changed. They pull at her guilt, remind her of her kindness, make her question her right to rest. And because she's wired to avoid conflict, she often gives in, not because she's weak, but because she equates peace with love. This is the empath's paradox. She craves peace so deeply that she tolerates chaos to maintain it. And yet, deep inside, her psyche knows something is off. Her dreams become restless. Her body starts to ache. She feels a quiet resentment she can't express. That's the unconscious calling her back. The shadow rising, demanding integration. In Jungian terms, the empath woman's inability to set boundaries is a symptom of a split between her conscious self, the giver, and her shadow self, the one who desires freedom, anger, and individuality. The more she suppresses that shadow, the more exhausted she becomes. But here's the twist. Her shadow isn't her enemy, it's her teacher. Every time she feels that spark of irritation when someone crosses her limits, that's her psyche whispering, "You exist too." Every time she says yes but means no, her inner voice grows quieter, until one day she can't hear it at all. And that silence is the true tragedy of the empath, the death of self-expression. Let's pause here and look deeper. Why is it so hard for the empath woman to choose herself? It's not just social conditioning, it's ancestral, generational. Centuries of women were told to nurture, to obey, to serve. The empath woman carries those instructions in her blood. When she prioritizes herself, she feels the ghost of every silenced mother, healer, and mystic warning her. Be careful. They'll call you selfish. And that fear still lives in her nervous system. Setting a boundary feels like breaking an ancient contract, one written long before her birth. But here's the revelation. Breaking that contract is exactly how she begins to heal it. When she says, "No, I need space," she's not rejecting love, she's rewriting love's definition. When she chooses to rest instead of rescue, she's teaching the world that empathy can coexist with self-respect. This is not rebellion. This is evolution. Carl Jung believed that the goal of life is individuation, becoming whole by integrating every part of the self, even those we've rejected. For the empath woman, individuation begins the moment she realizes she cannot save everyone, that her worth does not depend on her usefulness, that love, real love, can survive her boundaries. But the path to this realization is not easy. It's messy, lonely, and filled with moments of guilt that feel unbearable. Because when she starts saying no, the world pushes back. People withdraw. She feels the sting of isolation and wonders if she's made a mistake. That's when the dark night of the empath begins. The space between who she was and who she's becoming, and it's in that darkness that she meets her true self for the first time. Her voice, raw and unfiltered. Her emotions, untamed and unapologetic. Her intuition, finally unmasked from guilt. This is where everything shifts. Because the empath woman begins to realize that boundaries are not punishments. They are portals. Each no creates space for a deeper yes. Each line drawn reclaims a piece of her soul. But the process is not over. It's only just beginning. Because the moment she learns to protect her energy, she'll have to confront something even harder. The part of her that enjoyed being needed. And that's the hidden truth we'll uncover next. The shadow side of empathy, and why the empath woman's desire to help often hides a deeper, unconscious need. There's a moment, one that most empath women recognize but rarely name, when your body tenses before your mind even understands why. Someone asks for your time, your energy, or your silence, and before you can think, you've already said yes. It feels automatic, almost like muscle memory. But beneath that reflex is something much older and more complex than politeness. It's the archetypal wound of the wounded healer that Jung spoke of. You see, empaths don't just listen to pain, they absorb it. They don't simply comfort others, they merge with them. And this merging is both their gift and their undoing. From a Jungian lens, the empath woman often embodies the anima mundi, the soul of the world. She feels the collective unconscious moving through her veins, sensing the invisible frequencies of people's unspoken emotions. But here's the shadow of it. When you are so open to the pain of others, your own psychic borders begin to dissolve. It's not that empath women lack boundaries. It's that they were never taught that they were allowed to have them. From childhood, they were often praised for their kindness, their gentleness, their selflessness. "You're such a good girl," they were told. Each compliment a subtle reinforcement that their worth lies in how much they can endure. But here's the part nobody tells you. When an empath learns to suppress her her unconscious begins to revolt. The body manifests the rebellion that the voice cannot. Fatigue, migraines, anxiety, all become somatic expressions of a boundary violated too often. Jung believed that what we repress doesn't disappear. It descends into the unconscious and takes on a life of its own. So when the empath woman continually prioritizes peace over authenticity, she feeds a growing shadow within. A dark, quiet anger that waits for acknowledgement. And that's where the inner conflict begins. Because deep down, she knows she is being drained. She senses when someone's presence leaves her heavier than before, but she still feels guilty for wanting space. Why? Because empathy, when distorted, becomes self-sacrifice, and the world has long romanticized the woman who burns herself to keep others warm. But imagine this. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For an empath, that includes accepting that she has limits, that her compassion is sacred only when it flows from a full heart, not an empty one. Yet acknowledging this truth often feels like betrayal. Betrayal of her nature, her upbringing, her very identity as a good person. Mini hook. But here's the real paradox. The empath woman often attracts those who unconsciously need her inability to say no, people who feed off her giving nature, who see her not as a person, but as a mirror for their wounds. In Jungian terms, this is a projection loop. The narcissist projects their hunger for validation. The empath absorbs it, mistaking it for love. It's not a conscious choice. It's an energetic magnetism between unhealed archetypes. And slowly, the empath's aura becomes a battleground. She feels every tension in the air, every unsaid word, every sigh heavy with unspoken resentment. Jung described this kind of psychic sensitivity as a function of intuition that's turned outward. But when it's overextended, it becomes torture. Because instead of perceiving truth, the empath becomes entangled in other people's illusions. This is where the boundary struggle turns spiritual. The empath woman is not just managing relationships. She's managing the unseen forces that live within those relationships. Every emotional exchange carries energy. Every conversation a subtle transaction of psychic material. And when she absorbs too much, she begins to lose her sense of self. Her inner voice becomes faint. Her dreams shift tone, sometimes darker, sometimes distant. Jung would call this a crisis of individuation, the loss of distinction between the self and the other. But here's where everything begins to break. Because when an empath woman finally tries to reclaim her boundaries, the world resists. People who benefited from her softness now label her as cold, difficult, or changed. They call her selfish for doing what they've done all along, protecting their own energy. This backlash is not accidental. It's archetypal. It mirrors the story of the goddess Persephone, who was taken into the underworld and had to navigate her own darkness before reclaiming her throne. The empath woman's underworld is not a place. It's a season, a psychological descent into solitude where she learns that love without limits becomes bondage. In that descent, she encounters the shadow of the mother archetype within her, the part that nurtures everyone but herself. And when she finally looks that shadow in the eye, something shifts. She realizes that her empathy was never meant to make her small. It was meant to make her wise. Mini hook. But wisdom has a cost. To set boundaries, the empath woman must first grieve. She must grieve the illusion that everyone deserves access to her heart. She must release the comfort of being needed. She must confront the loneliness that comes when she stops being the emotional caretaker of everyone else's chaos. Because once she begins to say no, the noise of the world fades, and in that silence, she meets her true self for the first time. That silence is uncomfortable at first. The absence of familiar pain feels strange, almost unbearable. It's in that moment that the empath realizes how much of her identity was built on fixing others. Without someone to rescue, she feels lost. But that void is sacred. It's the womb of her transformation. Jung said that individuation is not about becoming good, but about becoming whole. And wholeness demands both light and shadow, compassion and confrontation. As the empath learns to hold both, she begins to notice a shift in her energy. Her yes becomes deliberate, not desperate. Her no becomes graceful, not guilty. The people who used to drain her either adapt or disappear. And for the first time, her empathy stops feeling like a burden. It becomes power. Because empathy with boundaries is alchemy. It transforms suffering into wisdom, connection into choice. The empath woman's journey isn't about closing her heart. It's about learning that she can open it selectively without losing herself in the process. But here's the final twist in this chapter. The world will always test her newfound boundaries. Old patterns will return in new disguises. Familiar energies will try to re-enter through nostalgia, guilt, or spiritual bypassing. And when that happens, she must remember, protecting her energy is not rejection. It's respect. It's the language of self-love that the unconscious finally understands. Because sometimes saving yourself is the most empathic thing you can do. There comes a point in every empath woman's life where the exhaustion becomes too familiar to ignore. It's not the kind of tiredness that sleep can cure, it's a soul-level depletion, a feeling of being stretched thin across too many hearts. She looks in the mirror and realizes that the reflection staring back at her feels faint, as if pieces of her have been scattered across the lives of everyone she's ever tried to save. This is the quiet beginning of individuation, the process Carl Jung described as the integration of the conscious and unconscious self. But unlike the grand tales of enlightenment people imagine, this stage begins in discomfort. Because for the empath woman, individuation means pulling back the emotional threads she's woven into others. It means reclaiming her psychic energy from the very people who once defined her sense of purpose. And here's the part nobody tells you. When she starts to pull back, she will feel guilty. The guilt isn't proof she's doing something wrong. It's proof that she's healing. That guilt is the echo of her conditioning, whispering, "You're abandoning them." But the truth is, she's not abandoning anyone. She's simply returning to herself. In Jungian terms, this is the moment when the shadow begins to integrate. The shadow is not evil. It's the parts of the self that have been rejected, shamed, or silenced. For the empath woman, her shadow often holds her suppressed anger, her unmet needs, and her forgotten desires. She may dream of standing up to those who drained her, or find herself suddenly disinterested in people who once consumed her attention. These are not signs of bitterness. They are signs of the psyche rebalancing itself. Mini hook. But here's where it gets dark. When the empath stops overgiving, her relationships reveal their true nature. Some people begin to resent her newfound strength. They miss the version of her that never said no, that absorbed their pain without asking for anything in return. In this way, the empath's boundaries become a mirror, reflecting back to others their own dependency and emotional immaturity. This can be deeply isolating. It's as though she has stepped out of a shared dream, and the people around her can no longer recognize her. But this solitude isn't punishment, it's initiation. Jung described individuation as a path walked alone, where one must face their inner archetypes without distraction. For the empath, solitude becomes sacred territory, the only place she can hear her authentic voice again. During this stage, she begins to understand the difference between empathy and enmeshment. Empathy feels, "I understand your pain." Enmeshment says, "Your pain is mine to carry." The distinction seems small, but spiritually, it's everything. Because empathy honors connection, while enmeshment dissolves identity. The empath woman's evolution depends on recognizing that she is not responsible for everyone's healing. She can offer compassion without collapsing into others' wounds. Mini hook. But the deeper she heals, the darker the test becomes. Because once she stops rescuing others, her own inner rescuer, the archetype Jung might link to the wounded healer, turns its gaze inward. She begins to confront the parts of herself she's avoided through caretaking. Her loneliness, her rage, her longing for unconditional love. These feelings are raw, ancient, and terrifying. They're the reason she gave so much away, to avoid meeting her own unmet emotions. But this confrontation is the key. The moment she allows herself to feel without judgment, her empathy begins to transform into discernment. She no longer senses energy just to absorb it. She senses it to understand it. Her intuition becomes sharper, cleaner, less clouded by guilt. Jung believed that true psychic awareness comes only after shadow integration, when one has embraced both light and darkness as necessary aspects of the soul. Now imagine this shift like a change in frequency. Before, her empathy was tuned to everyone's suffering, like a radio constantly picking up static. But now she begins to fine-tune her signal. She learns that not every cry for help is hers to answer. Not every broken person wants to heal. Not every relationship deserves her constant repair. And as she accepts this, her energy becomes magnetic in a new way. Not because she's available, but because she's aligned. People begin to notice something different about her. Her presence feels calmer, yet more powerful. She no longer reacts to emotional chaos. She observes it. She doesn't absorb negativity anymore. She lets it pass through her. This is what Jung might call the emergence of the self, the central, balanced archetype that integrates all others. But here's the secret twist. The more she integrates, the more the world tests her mastery. The empath woman will attract new experiences that challenge her boundaries in subtle ways. A friend who manipulates with guilt. A partner who confuses control with care. A coworker who feeds off her patience. These are not coincidences. They are psychic mirrors. Each one asks her the same question. Will you choose yourself this time? And with each yes to herself, her aura strengthens. The leaks close. Her sensitivity no longer feels like a curse. It becomes a form of wisdom, because she now understands that boundaries are not walls. They're membranes of consciousness. They allow energy to flow in and out with awareness. Mini hook. But here's where the alchemy completes. In learning to protect herself, the empath woman becomes a healer of a higher order, not the kind who bleeds for others, but the kind who heals through presence alone. Her energy no longer says, "Use me." It says, "Be inspired by me." She becomes the embodiment of integrated empathy, where compassion meets clarity, and kindness meets self-respect. Jung often wrote that every archetype has a shadow and a potential for transformation. The empath's shadow is martyrdom, but her potential is mastery. Mastery of emotional energy, mastery of perception, mastery of the unseen dynamics that shape human behavior. And through this mastery, she discovers something profound. That her ability to feel deeply was never meant to enslave her. It was meant to guide her toward the truth of unity without absorption. She learns that she can love without losing herself, help without depleting herself, and connect without carrying someone else's soul on her shoulders. That's the hidden power of the empath woman who has met her shadow. She becomes unshakable, not because she hardens, but because she has finally returned home to herself. And this homecoming is not quiet. It radiates. Others may not understand it, but they will feel it. The energy that once scattered now glows from within. The empath who once said yes to everything now chooses with intention. Her life begins to align with synchronicity. Those Jungian signs that appear when the inner and outer worlds are finally in harmony. Because when an empath woman heals, the collective unconscious shifts too. Every no she speaks echoes through generations of women taught to silence themselves. Every boundary she honors becomes a ripple in the archetypal field. A message that says, compassion does not require your self-destruction. And that's when she realizes, setting boundaries was never about protection alone. It was about liberation.